It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Karen V. Johnson. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Hi. How are you? And thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I'm looking at your bio here. There's a very interesting story, which we will get into in a second. You've got a book out currently called Living Grieving, and the subtitle is Using Energy Medicine to Alchemize Grief and Loss. The book came out last July, is that correct?
Yep, last July 20th to be exact.
Okay, so almost a year, short of a year.
Yep.
And the story it's sad, but I don't know, how would I describe it? It's sad, but then it resolves itself in some way, yeah? Is that about accurate?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It's totally accurate, yes.
Why don't you just tell the story? Give us, what happened. I know it says you were working as a federal judge. Why don't you start from there?
Okay. Yeah, I was working as a federal judge and kind of going along my way, not particularly religious or spiritual in any way. And I knew my 27-year-old son was struggling. He had a business that failed, and he was just not finding his way in life very well. But So I went on a vacation thinking when I get back, he and I are going to have to talk, and we're going to have to sit down and have a talk. And while I was on vacation in South Korea, actually, I got the call from a detective, and I hadn't been feeling well that day. I felt really gloomy and cloudy, and then he didn't leave a message. And so I called back, and the detective said, "Well, where are you?" And I said, "I'm in South Korea." And he said, "Well, this is about your son, Ben." And I thought, oh, what? Did he have an accident? What happened? No, he's dead.
Oh,
yeah. So day is night, night is day. Oh, in South Korea, it's 13 and a half hours of difference. And so I couldn't get on a plane until the next morning. So frantic all night, calling my daughter and my ex-husband and everyone, letting them know. And so I get to the airport in South Korea. I'm sitting there, and Ben appears in front of me, just like he looked in life, right? His big old smile, and he was just standing there, and then he kind of faded away. And I desperately called my ex-husband. I said, "I think he's alive. I think he's in the freezer, and he's trying to get out. You've got to call the ME. You've got to call the ME. I think he's alive." And so, of course, he called the ME, and the ME looked and said, "I'm sorry, but he's gone," right? So, but the point of that story is to say that was my really first indication that there really is life after death. And it was, sometimes death is the doorway. And for me, his death was the doorway into a spiritual path that I would not have pursued probably otherwise. So, and to see and to know that in fact there's life after death. And I've had many contacts with my son over the years and still do. So for me, it was great comfort in a way to know that actually he's happier on the other side than he was here in this physical life. And that, and then I could have a spiritual path, and I could pursue a path that was completely different than anything that I had pursued before.
Well, interesting story. Before we get to that, let me just ask you something about, he died of a heroin overdose, according to your bio, right?
Yes.
Did you know that he was having drug and dependency issues?
No, he wasn't. I don't know if he experimented any before. All I know is I had the ME check his body, and there was no other needle marks. So I think they had gone to a party, they got drunk, and then they decided to try heroin, and they just gave him too much. He was a big guy, 6'8", 280 pounds, and
oh wow,
they just gave him a lot, and he died almost instantly.
Oh, so this was, you could call it an accidental overdose, probably, yeah?
Right. You call it, being young and foolish, and, as so many young people are. And right now, the amount of overdoses from drugs has increased 20 to 30% over what it was before the pandemic.
Well, the fentanyl, the fentanyl thing is a nightmare right now.
The fentanyl is really, really, really kicked in there, too. Ben didn't have fentanyl in his system, and his was pure heroin, but that will kill you, too.
Oh, sure it will. Well, I'm just thinking that he didn't set out to die, is my point. I don't think it was a suicide, right?
No, I don't think he set out to die at all.
So it was just an accidental overdose, yeah. Okay, well, that's still sad, but... So after that, you went through a period of grief, and you quit your job as a federal judge, sold your house, and went on a 2.5-year journey around the world. Where did you go? Where was the first place that you went?
Oh, gosh. So the first place I went was Chile. And I had begun training with the Four Winds. This is about a year after he passed. And I had gone on a spiritual path, and I had found the Four Winds, which is a neo-shamanism. And so I was going to Chile for training and to assist with the class. And so I was working with Alberto Villoldo with the Four Winds. And that was my first landing page. And 30 days, and I always say, gosh, in those 30 days, I was outside in nature more than I had been in the previous 30 years. Because with my high-paced life as a judge in Washington, D.C., I thought it was great to say I haven't taken a vacation. I'm working hard, and I would have a staycation, stay at home and get things done. And so my life was very, the hamster wheel of life that we buy into, thinking this is going to bring us happiness and joy and money and all those success-oriented goodies that we like to have, that give us a lot of emotional rewards.
Well, it's true. And I think that in America, particularly in the West, that money does buy a certain level of comfort and security, but it doesn't necessarily buy happiness, or there's nothing on the spiritual side that money can really buy for you. That's sort of a journey I think people need to find on their own. And oftentimes it doesn't take any money at all. It just takes a kind of a realignment of your priorities. And I think that's what you did when you took off and went. So when you traveled around, did you have a purpose for that, or was it just to, for lack of a better term, change the channel that you'd been watching for the past 30, 40 years?
Well, actually, I thought I really was trying to comprehend grief and death and loss. And so I went to various cultures. I went to Africa and worked with a shaman there. I went to India. I went to Bangladesh. Oh, gosh, so many countries that I went to. And every place I wanted to talk to spiritual leaders and about death and dying and grief and how are we supposed to deal with this in our lives. And I mean, I really was on a quest. It just knocked me, Ben's death just knocked me kind of out of the matrix, out of life. And nothing seemed real anymore. Nothing seemed important. Nothing seemed right. Nothing seemed normal. And so I was desperately seeking to how can I get my life back in order? How can I find something that is meaningful, something that means something that has purpose? How can I find my meaning and purpose in life? I just had lost it. And so that's what my journey was really about. I really thought maybe I would write a blog about it. And then the blogs kind of turned into a book, and I felt like this book was downloaded to me in so many ways. It just came through from spirit, and it was really, it kind of wrote itself.
How many years has it been since your son died?
It has been 7 years. It'll be 8 years this year.
Okay. And so through your journey and your traveling, It sounds like you reinvented your life, yeah?
I did. I went from living in Washington, D.C. and dealing with the second worst traffic in the country for 30 years to living in upstate New York on a lake and really out in nature, out in the country, and doing spiritual work, spiritual healing, shamanic healing work, and helping souls to transition to the other side. And I wrote this book. So my life changed profoundly.
So tell me a little bit about the shamanic practices. I see on your website that you're offering some services for people. It says healing practices, rites and ceremonies, space clearing and blessing. Now that's not like clearing brush and trees, right? That's inner space.
No, no, that's clearing the clutter of spirits and energy.
Okay. You're not out there with a sickle going through clearing the brush. No, okay.
No. It's a little different practice.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that. What can somebody expect if they're interested in going through your services?
Well, if they really are interested in having maybe their house cleared, and maybe they feel like there's energies or entities around, or their yard, or their garden, or whatever they want to have cleared, I can go in and we use carnations and Palo Santo and prayers and ask the entities to follow the smoke home. This is never about kicking anything out or doing anything in a negative way, but just allowing spirits to have the opportunity to find their way home, because sometimes spirits just get stuck in between worlds for whatever reason, and they don't really know it, or they don't really know how to get home. So we want to help them to find their way home. And sometimes spirits get stuck on land, and maybe we'll have a fire ceremony, a beautiful fire ceremony, and we turn our backs to the fire and allow an opportunity for the spirits to follow the smoke of the fire home. So those are some things we do for house clearing and land clearing. And then for people, gosh, I work with so many people that have lost people. Many people, if I go back and I find someone who's got a really serious illness of some kind, we trace it back, it's often related to unresolved grief. And so helping people to resolve grief and anxiety and despair, and to really begin a journey to create a new life out of the ashes of the old ones that honors their loved ones. Sometimes we've been told, or we get the concept that if we don't mourn and we don't continue to mourn, then our loved ones on the other side won't think that we love them. And there's nothing further from the truth. They're watching us, and they want us to find a new life, and they want to use the wisdom of our loss and our grief to create something special, something that honors them. And in doing that, we also free them to actually do what they need to do on the other side. The more they're tied to us and they're tied to our suffering and loss and grief, the less they can do in their own journey on the other side. So we're kind of together in this process of, and I call it the hero's journey of the bereaved. And the journey is from transition through resurrection and rebirth on the other side. It's the same process that our loved ones go through. They transition from their physical body to their spiritual body. Then they kind of wake up on the other side and look around and like, oh, what am I going to do now? And then they're reborn, so they have an opportunity to create a new life in the afterworld. However anyone sees that, different cultures and different religions have different ways of looking at the afterlife, but however you see that, they have a better opportunity to do things. So we too are transitioning. We're transitioning from having this person in our life to not having them in our life. And then resurrecting on the other side, if we're really lucky and we get out of being stuck. And many people stay stuck in their grief and despair for 16 years, 20 years, many years. If we're lucky, we can resurrect and look around and say, okay, what's next? And how can I make this happen? And then be reborn into a new life out of the ashes of the old. So I'm working in, my book has 16 practices to help people to go through this process in a ceremonial way. So I ask people to get a pie pan and a candle and a notebook and a pencil and begin to work with 16 practices like non-judgment, non-suffering, non-attachment, the practice of beauty, by sitting in silence and really answering questions like, who are you judging? Who's judging you? So sometimes we judge ourselves so harshly. I should have done this. I should have done that. And the stories we tell ourselves, oh, it was my fault. If only I had done this. If I had made my loved one go to the doctors. If I had stayed home from vacation. If I had done this or that, then this wouldn't have happened. So, and all of that is not true and not real. So what I like to have people do is work with these things with spirit. So sit quietly, sit in a ceremonial way, and then we have this intention to release this judgments that we're carrying in our hearts and opening our hearts for new space to come in. Release the old stories we're telling ourselves, and so newness come in. And so there are many books that talk about, okay, so this is the next thing you need to do. You need to go on a date, or you need to go to a movie, or you need to go out in the world. But people aren't ready because they're carrying around this heaviness in their heart, the shame, blame, guilt, that trifecta. So my book is directed into helping people to relieve that, to break free of shame, blame, guilt, break free of the past, and to create a new life.
What do you think people are doing on the other side? You mentioned something about their journey once they leave the body. And I can just about comprehend what I'm doing now. But on the other side, I have no idea. So what do you think they're doing over there?
Well, I can tell you is my experience with Ben and other spirits. So on the other side, when they're fully transitioned, to begin with, Ben was sort of in a group of young men and women that had recently passed away. And then they kind of began to work with spiritual masters. And one day, recently, in the last few months, I said, oh, Ben, I'm kind of missing you. Why don't you come down? I just want to have your presence around me. And he came down and he kind of said, Mom, quit ringing my doorbell. I'm in the Jesus pod. I'm in the Jesus pod, and you know what? Jesus he's really cool. It's nothing like they tell you at church. And so, Mom, you're fine. You're fine. As only a 27-year-old can say, right? You're fine, Mom. You're fine now. And I got things to do on the other side. So it's not this concept of eternal slumber that we've been told about. They're busy. They have opportunities for learning and healing and growth and maybe even transitioning to other lives. I haven't experienced that with Ben, but maybe that's a certain point that they get to where they reincarnate. So lots going on the other side that at least for Ben, he is totally happier there than he was in life. In life, he came in with a lot of things to resolve. He had some medical issues. He had trouble finding his path. But on the other side, he's perfectly happy.
Well, I'm happy to hear that because I think...
Yeah, me too.
I mean, you do see people in this world that struggle daily. And,
yes.
Sometimes if there's an opportunity to do something better on the other side, I'm not suggesting people should kill themselves, but I'm suggesting that there is hope for these people who just struggle through their life in this world because maybe it's not for everyone. And
no, it's hard. A lot of young people are struggling, financially in so many ways. And also people that are older, people that are kind of in the end of their lifetimes, instead of being in fear, and passing in a way, trying desperately to hold on to life, being able to let go gently and say, I'm ready for this next adventure. I don't know about you, but that's what I want to be saying. I want to be saying, I'm ready. I'm ready for this next adventure. This one's done, and I can't wait to see what is on the other side.
I think that's the right attitude. Yeah, I don't think fearing death fearing something that we're all going to experience at some point, I think, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, I can fear the unknown, but fearing the known is I think it's a sort of a waste of time. It's futile.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've been told, you know, what, maybe we're going to go to hell. Maybe there's going to be bad things that happen. Maybe we're going to be, you know, stuck in internal slumber, waiting for how long. And so people get scared. They think, well, I certainly wasn't an angel all my life. I don't know. How am I going to fare? And all I can tell people is, in my experience, I've never seen hell on the other side. There are some denser places that people energetically, spirits can go for healing. Some spirits need some healing. They need some caretaking on the other side. But it is caretaking. It's not punishment. So I've just never seen a place on the other side that was punishment, the hell that we've been brought up to believe. And so if you can let go of that and say, oh boy, this is going to be great. There are going to be people there attending to me and teaching me and showing me things that I don't know or haven't learned here. It's kind of exciting.
Well, it certainly is something to look forward to. I think we'll all get there at some point. Karen, we do have to wind this down. We are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure. KarenJohnson.net. KarenJohnson.
Okay, .net, you said?
.net, yes. And you can find all my services and links to my book, and you can also find my book on Amazon. Okay,
great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was very interesting. And so you're doing this full-time now? This is what you're doing?
Full-time. Yep, this is what I do. I'm writing my second book, so
good
more
for
to come.
You. All right, super. We look forward to the second book. And again,
thank you.
Thank you for coming on, and best of luck.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.